The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Arthur Van Pelt from the Fake Toshi book. Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page.
Hello, hello. Good evening, everyone.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on, the price of Bitcoin is down slightly, 0.29% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 66,846, a high of 67,349, and a low of 66,241. 648 Bitcoins have changed hands, and you can get $1 for 1,496 Satoshis. Check it out at bitcoinal.com. Issue 1. Google warns quantum attack could crack Bitcoin in 9 minutes. As we all know, it takes about 10 minutes to send a Bitcoin transaction. So while your keys and your coins are sitting out there in the mempool waiting to be confirmed, Google says that their new quantum machine could break Bitcoin's encryption in 9 minutes, leaving your coins exposed. They say they won't do it right away. They're hiding how they're going to do it. They're being very cryptic. They say in about maybe a year and a half to 3 years, they'll be able to crack Bitcoin. So it might be time to upgrade Bitcoin's encryption. Arthur Van Pelt, what do you think about this exciting announcement from Google, which of course has set the Bitcoin world and cryptocurrency world awry?
Yeah, there's a lot to do about it, isn't it? I read it on. I'm mostly active on Twitter. Yeah, it's called X, but I always call it Twitter still. So I'm trying to follow that news for a bit. To be fair, I'm not that technical that I understand if it is true that it is now. I mean, it was at first, it was like it will take 10, 15 years before they get there. And now they think it's going to be faster, maybe even still in this decade that they can crack Bitcoin. I have no idea. I don't know. I see more and more attention for it, which is good. I see Coinbase diving on the subject. I'm not sure if that is the right person to go in to dive on it, but Nick Carter is on it. Blockstream is on it with 20 people. Adam Beck just announced. So I think Bitcoin will be fine, like always.
I definitely think it's time to ring the alarm bells. I've been unhappy talking about this quantum nonsense, but the Google paper is a serious threat. Of course, my first idea, and I don't know if anybody wants to do this, but let's just shorten the mempool time. If the mempool time is 5 minutes, that buys us a little bit more time. Obviously, Google's going to crack that as well, but that could be a quick and easy numeric fix. Just change 10 to 5 or process transactions faster. I don't know the exact difficulty. But naturally, I do think we're going to have to switch to a new quantum-proof encryption, but so is everybody else. All the banks, all the military, all the secrets, all the spies, whatever you got, they're exposed by this as well. So the media is focusing on Bitcoin, which is great, but everybody else is exposed as well. The other thing to note about this, what's so important for Bitcoin is, sure, for you and I, we could take our meager small amount of fractions of coins and you change them in for the new quantum signed or quantum encrypted coins is pretty sure how this is going to happen. The problem there is that the mystery man in the room, Mr. and Mrs. Space Alien Satoshi, hasn't moved their coins. So it's unlikely that they're going to upgrade them to the new quantum encryption coins, leaving them hopelessly exposed. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the Google announcement and the trouble of Satoshi's coins?
Well, I thought the most interesting aspect of the article was right at the end where they pointed out that, Ethereum is more quantum resistant because their transactions work quicker. And I was like, oh, here we go. This is what the real agenda is. It's about promoting Ethereum. I'm not particularly technical with computers, but my understanding of quantum computing is that it's notoriously unstable. So actually getting to the stage where you can produce a quantum computer, I mean, they keep saying, this is one of the things they've been making us afraid of for a long, long period of time. But, you start scraping the surface and looking into it, you're talking about quantum qubits, which is a very esoteric branch of physics, and actually getting a detailed, solid quantum computer is actually very, very challenging. So, I don't know. The article made me suspicious the moment I saw that piece about Ethereum right at the end. And again, everything I've always heard about quantum computing previously has been that when it gets to the stage where that's a particular danger, then, everyone's going to be in the same problem as you've just said, Thomas. So it does feel like one of those boogeymen that they kind of pull out of the cupboard from time to time just to get everyone scared, as if we're not scared enough already because, the price of Bitcoin's already crashed by 50%. I think it's a strategy by people who just want to buy some Bitcoin low, to be fair. So, it's like, how much can we scare these people? They're not scared enough. Let's talk about quantum computers again.
It reminds me a lot of the Y2K problem, where it was described as a big technical problem, but really it was just an upgrade path. Most of the important computers, especially the bank computers and what have you, they upgraded to a new Y2K, proof program that had the extra digits, so on and so forth. They had no problems. The computers didn't crash at midnight on the year 2000. I don't think they're going to crash this time easily either. But like Victoria said, everybody loves talking about it. I've said that we're not going to talk about it again until it's a big issue. As we said before, they're going to have to use Coinbase. Their Coinbase, these other people are working on it. My audio's changed. How exciting. But they're going to have to switch to quantum proof encryption. We've all talked about how they're going to have a program to do it. These major exchanges have already launched little working groups to have these programs, and they're going to have that. So I'm sure we'll be fine, but it's fun news now. And like Victoria said, it might shake the market. Some people might freak out because it's not quantum proof. A lot of the claims they're saying some of the large Bitcoin holders, the people with the big money, they were moving and selling because they were afraid of this. It's a lot to be afraid of. I think government shutdown, China banning it, all the things that we've been through are scarier than this.
Did you know who's going to run away with it?
I don't know where the magic 8-ball is, so we'll worry about that later. But let's keep moving. Issue 2, Cathie Wood has a brutal response to the 50% Bitcoin crash. She says it's not so bad. Given that Bitcoin has crashed up to 75 to 90% before, Wood says now that Bitcoin seems to be finding a base in the $60,000 to $70,000 range, it's not so bad, and she's still optimistic. Victoria Jones, what do you think about famous investor Cathie Wood, who says 50% off, not so bad?
I mean, what is she smoking? Honestly, I mean, it's just such an argument to save face. Yeah, 50% is a big deal. If you bought Bitcoin in September last year, I mean, I had a financial advisor call me last year and ask whether or not, now was if I could help him buy Bitcoin. And I was like, well, just so you know, I think this is probably the worst time to be buying Bitcoin right now. And isn't it just as well I pointed that out? Because anyone new who got into the market in September, 50% is absolutely a big deal. And the problem is, a lot of these banks, especially thanks to Michael Saylor, have this narrative that Bitcoin can only go up forever. But in the entire life cycle of Bitcoin, we've seen it have these crashes before. I mean, I don't know what the banks are on, thinking that we're never going to have a crash again just because they're part of the market, and their markets we've seen throughout history are notoriously fragile. So I mean, people have to be really careful listening to any of these headlines, to be honest. But then again, considering how crazy a lot of these headlines are, it doesn't surprise me. But I mean, it's such a classic way of trying to save face. And it's really out of touch with what the average Bitcoiner really thinks. So
50% is absolutely crushing for a normal person. You had something where maybe you had 2, now you have 1, it's a horrible loss. You look at yourself, why didn't I sell at 2? Why didn't I sell 1.85 or 1.5? With the dream, of course, that you'd still be alive and positive and normal about it to buy back in here. So you could get, 3 or 4 or whatever. Nobody's that smart. Nobody times the market perfectly. Not even Cathie Wood, who I think was selling some of her tech stocks and selling some of her Bitcoin lately, maybe covering her ass. And remember, we had the big Michael Saylor thing. He spoke at the convention. I think we were near an all-time high. And he told everybody in their family at that convention, mortgage yourself, start a company, put your Bitcoin in the company, sell the stock in the company, buy more Bitcoin, which has been a great idea for almost any of the last 10 years, but not so great right now. And you never know when you're in it if you're going to hold on to that 1 and maybe it becomes 3 or value of 3 or value of 4 again, or if it just goes down forever. Arthur Van Pelt, what do you think about Cathie Wood and her optimistic 50%'s not so bad?
No, actually, I have to agree with that part. If you look long term, and I'm not an OG, of course, because I've been in Bitcoin since 2012. But so I've seen Bitcoin since double digits. She's right about the percentage of crashes over the years. It's smoothing out. On the other hand, the two things that are disappointing is more that on the upside. A lot of people predicted that Bitcoin would go to at least 250,000, maybe even 500,000 to 1 million has been predicted, and that didn't happen. And we only went to 100 and what was it, 26,000. Then 50%. Of course, if you're new for the last 1 or 2 years, of course, then 50% is a lot. But for me, I'm not shocked. I'm an old timer, not an OG, but an old timer, and it doesn't scare me much. I keep on holding and I keep on stacking whenever possible at any price. So yeah, that's just my. But what is a bit what you also notice? Maybe we get back to that later in the show. To talk about it in more detail, but what I'm noticing is that a lot of miners are actually selling. That is a bit, no, yeah, that surprises me a little, actually.
It is a bit disconcerting to see some of the miners exit, but again, they do have lots of things to pay for, lots of materials and equipment that they've bought. I agree with you, Arthur. People say, oh, they look at, me or anybody else that's been in a long time and they're like, wow, you survived this 90% drop and that 70% drop and 250% drops or whatever it is. And they're like, yeah, survived, but look at me. Look at what happened. Look at, I've lost this, I lose that, I sell at the wrong time, I buy at the wrong time. I didn't just, nobody just survives these horrible things. Like everybody makes mistakes. Everybody looks at it and says, oh, I screwed it up. Oh, I could have done it right. I could have retired here or there or whatever. And it keeps happening. So yeah, I don't think Miss Wood's been in too many of these giant crashes, although obviously she's a Wall Street expert and so forth. But I guess in a way, though, 50 is still better than 70 or 90 for what it's worth. The people that are crying over 50% loss would be really sad over a 70 or 90% loss.
But she's assuming it's over, though. And traditionally, it's not. Classically, the bottom would come in around September. So she's still got another 6 months. So if it's 50% now, who knows? It could be 75% by September. So she's saying that prematurely. We don't know that it's bottomed yet. She's assuming that.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Another 6 months of winter from Groundhog Victoria. Meanwhile, we do have the magic 8 ball for the exit question. So, Arthur, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
My guess is higher.
Victoria Jones, higher or lower?
I'm going to say lower. And you call me a groundhog, but your AI analysis proved that I'm the most accurate of all your commentators. So you have to factor that in.
Yes, Victoria in the high 70%. I think the 8 ball was around 50%, which is interesting because it leans towards yes. So it's an optimistic ball. And of course, we asked the 8 ball, the optimistic version of the question, will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? It is, let's see, outlook not so good. Outlook, not so good. The ball is bearish. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com where we've got lots of news shorts, apparently with Darren, and a little bit of Kato Miner. Check out the shorts and more at worldcryptonetwork.com. Moving on to issue 3, Bitcoin miner Riot platform sells over $250 million worth of Bitcoin. Nice work if you can get it. Also, David Bailey's Nakamoto sells roughly 5% of its Bitcoin holdings, offloading 284 Bitcoins. Yow. And Donald Trump linked, or Eric Trump actually linked, American Bitcoin hit 7,000 Bitcoin ownership milestone as the shares slide the stock into penny stock territory. Arthur Van Pelt, what do you think about the Bitcoin miners, the Bitcoin Nakamoto holders, and the American Bitcoin holders all in trouble with their Bitcoin treasury strategies?
Yeah, I looked into that a bit because it surprised me that I had the idea that there's too much selling going on, and when you find out that it's actually the miners who are selling in large quantities, and that's where Michael Saylor, of course, takes a little bit of the table again. But yeah, they're all going to AI. It seems to be more profitable than Bitcoin. No, yeah, okay, so be it. But I was hoping that they would hold on to their Bitcoins more but they're selling actually more than I expected. Which is, yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed.
I do think it's short-sighted of the miners. I understand going to AI because the profits, short-term, near-term, probably more there, but I would still hold the Bitcoin, right? I would have the AI machines running AI, pile of Bitcoin, see how it goes. But the miners are being more careful and cautious with it. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the miners selling as well as the other stories?
Well, I think the case for all three stories is just a demonstration of just how challenging it is to run a business in today's environment, because, all of those businesses have expenses to pay. And if they are strong believers in Bitcoin and they are heavy investors in Bitcoin, then, if they've got 90% of their holdings in Bitcoin, if you've got high expenses, which a lot of the miners do, then in order to raise that cash, you have to sell it. And also, at this point in the cycle, when Bitcoin is typically in a bear market, the miners can't risk it going down further because, again, of the expenses they have to pay. The longer they wait, the more you have the risk of it going further down, the more costly it's going to be in Bitcoin terms for them to actually meet those expenses. And so they have to. The way Bitcoin is designed, the miners have to sell Bitcoin in order to pay for the electricity that requires to mine it. That's the mechanics of the system. And then, of course, with Eric Trump, they might have accumulated all this Bitcoin in the first quarter of this year. But if the price has been going down that whole time, then that's not going to do much for the stock value. It'll do great when it recovers, but right at this point in time, then that's going to look really bad. And of course, you've got that traditional saying, which is, the markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. So again, if the Trump family have jumped on Bitcoin because they've been listening to Michael Saylor saying that it only ever goes up and you need to buy it because you're buying a piece of Manhattan, that's fine. But if you're trying to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible and using all your funds before it's reached the bottom, that's not going to work out very well. So all of these things need a bit more of a sensible strategy. Bitcoin is not like the stock market. It's got a very different infrastructure, and you need to understand how that works and what the risks and the threats are with it. Because, from a financial perspective, Bitcoin's potential is undeniable if it can deliver on what it promises. But at the moment, we've got all sorts of issues going on with Bitcoin software. We've already got challenges supposedly from propaganda regarding quantum computers. But, some of the real problems on the ground about how Bitcoin is developing, over the last 12 months since last October, the number of nodes that are actually operating have gone down because of the whole knots versus core argument. And unless you've got some kind of understanding of the software in the background, you wouldn't know how much that's actually affecting the price of Bitcoin, because for Bitcoin to fulfill its promise, it needs to be a form of digital cash. And when you've got a number of nodes being knocked offline because of the knots versus core debate, it is going to slow things down. And at the moment, we don't know how the argument's going to play out. So, there are lots of factors to consider that are affecting Bitcoin at the moment, not least the fact that, all prices are going up, which are affecting the price of the dollar. There's problems occurring in private credit. There are some private credit companies that are stopping their investors from accessing it. And all of these are deflationary issues, which will have an impact on the price of Bitcoin. So it's not that straightforward, and there are many aspects that you need to consider if you're ever going to assess the price of Bitcoin properly.
I think it's a real indictment of the Bitcoin treasury strategy. It was too simple, it was too good to be true, and it was too easy. I remember listening to the Michael Saylor speech on my way home from the conference, the Las Vegas conference, which was so crowded, by the way. They filled the room, they packed the room, everybody was in there. It was going to be crazy for the Saylor speech. And you know what happens when I hear about a room that's going to be crazy? I head the other way. So I was already driving out of there, listening to the speech on YouTube on my car radio. And at first, I was like everybody else. I got the dollar signs in my eyes. I was like, I'm going to go to Wyoming and I'm going to start a corporation and I'm going to sell shares in my Bitcoin and I'm going to use that money to buy more Bitcoin and I'm going to do what Michael Saylor tells me to do. And then I said, hold on a second. I'd be liable for that. I'd be liable for everybody who bought the shares. What if we don't do good? What if it goes down? So on and so forth. And at least I had the good sense not to start my own Bitcoin treasury company. I didn't have the great sense to sell at that time, which would have been an all-time high, I think. But what an interesting time when, like Victoria said, they're telling the Trumps, buy all you can, start up this treasury company, be like Saylor. And at the same time, everyone who knows anything about the stock market, it's like, well, that worked once. Why is it going to work again? Why would Saylor's strategy just be so simple? We could all replicate it. And companies like MetaPlanet, who recently expanded their Bitcoin holdings, the Japanese company, and other Bitcoin or Ethereum holding companies think they're so smart, but they're rerunning last week's game, last week's thing. Now, maybe it works if they can hold on long enough, but right now it doesn't look too good. Also, it's tough to say, again, to kick on poor Nakamoto when they're down. But they talked and talked about how they had this algorithmic strategy and they were going to sell and buy at the right times and somehow get more coins. And it was always very questionable. And now you see that they're in kind of a defensive position here, selling 5% of their holdings, like Victoria said, probably to keep things going, pay their salaries, pay off some of the float on that Kraken loan that they have going on top of their Bitcoin. And again, for Riot to change companies, it's fine to go to AI. I don't know about selling the Bitcoin. And then you have to just watch out. I don't know what's going to happen with this American Bitcoin. It seemed very following, very like we're 3 days late, like we're behind the market, but we're chasing it anyway. And if you can't trust Eric Trump to lead the company, who can you trust? Obviously the best that the Trumps have. But any more on this issue? Arthur, do you want to say anything else about Bitcoin treasury company strategies?
Well, no, not really. I mean, I'm only saying that it's disappointing to see that what happened with the Bitcoin. What was it? The strategy reserve or something that America announced. Instead, we got the Trump coin and the Melanie coin or something, and they all dumped for 97%. I mean, that I see as I'm from Holland, so I don't care too much. But on the other hand, if I was an American, and I have many American friends, but I do feel for them that they didn't get their Bitcoin strategy reserve, or what was it called, as promised in the politics before Trump was elected. I'm curious actually what Victoria thinks about that.
Well, it certainly has been a major turn since the Trump administration came in. Many people thought because they liked crypto that would be good for crypto. But if you really observe the Trump administrations and what they do, they destroy even the things that they like. So it's not surprising to see both the world, the economy, the international situation, everything pretty much on fire. The no new wars promise is up in flames. I don't want to be too mean to Josh Segala, but he did believe Trump when he said no new wars. I said this whole time, there's this strategy in politics called pandering, where you say, oh, well, what do you want to hear? And then I say that. And this whole time, everything that he said when he went, and he even said it himself, when he went to the Bitcoin convention, he said, I'm not stupid, implying that the previous president was stupid. He says, I know that you say the Christian thing to the Christians and you say the Bitcoin thing to the Bitcoiners, implying again that he believed in nothing except himself and enriching himself and his family, and that the rest of this, just play it by ear. And again, who knows why he did the Iran war? Many people say it was Israel and so on and so forth. But yes, it does seem like the world, the economy, everything's kind of spiraling out of control. And we have one person to thank for that. But we'll see how it goes. Victoria, anything else on that? Arthur wanted to know how you thought about the Trumps going down. And of course, Trump and Melania coin, very unsuccessful for their investors.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking, really, just how transparently bad that whole thing has been. But I'll certainly comment on, my perspective on the Iran war. I actually did a talk in Mallorca last year where I talked about Bitcoin and war before all of this broke out. And one of the things I pointed out in that talk was that, throughout history, since the 1600s, we've kind of been on this slow progression towards getting a central bank. They had all these bank failures in the 1800s, so then they brought in the Federal Reserve, and then of course the First and Second World Wars helped to break the gold standard, and got America to take on the mantle of being the world reserve currency. And now you don't have bank failures, but you do have central bank failures, and so the central banks need a central bank, which is now the Bank for International Settlements. And almost every central bank in the world is now part of that system, apart from 5 significant ones. And Russia, Syria, Syria finally agreed to do their first SWIFT transaction last summer, North Korea, Venezuela, and Iran. Oh, and isn't it strange that these are all the places where we're getting wars this year? So basically, from my perspective, these wars are just a strategy to try and capitulate these central banks so that they can get their world reserve. They can get everything under one central bank, because once they can do that, they can hide any debt that's going on anywhere in the world. They can't do that, at the moment, because you've got central banks in Venezuela and Iran that deliberately outside of that system. Those are the holdouts which are preventing this global system. And so you've got this other existential fight going on, because if they can get all of the central banks under one system, they've then got control over the money system, and Bitcoin doesn't have a fighting chance. And not only that, but at the moment you've got all of these issues going on with Bitcoin software at the moment. So we're at a really tricky phase. It's almost, what's going to win? Can Bitcoin sort its issues out and start providing the world with the financial infrastructure that we desperately need? Or is whoever's operating behind Trump going to get their objective of getting the entire world's money system under one system? Because we don't have it there yet, but we're literally 2 seconds to midnight. All they need to do is bully these Venezuela and Iran into submission. They've already got Syria, and it's game over. So, I see the whole thing from a very different perspective. In my view, that's what's really going on with these wars.
The Iran war did seem a little obvious and telegraphed, although I do think from the Trump perspective, they thought that it would go like the Venezuelan war, or whatever we're going to call that, where they went in, they grabbed the leader, Maduro, they made a deal with the second in command, and they think that that's improved their situation. So that's an interesting regime change option. In this case, they went in and murdered the leaders of Iran. Then a new Ayatollah, presumably more radical and radicalized by the murder of his family and friends, is now put into power. So that's not the same thing. Even the second command in Venezuela likely would betray us if anyone would pay her more, so on and so forth. But that does seem to be what we've bought in the short term. but we'll have to see how it goes. We have a few more light, fun stories on our way out here. Beeple has a great new graphic. He says, "Please take us with you to the moon." It's got a picture with some astronauts, lots of Bitcoin floating around, many NFTs in the background, and Vitalik is there too, being held in the arms of one of the astronauts. Just more great Bitcoin-related art from the daily art producer Beeple, who sold the $69 million NFT. We also have a great story from Michael Del Castillo, Del Rey Man on Twitter. He says, "Today is a huge day in my life, and for some people very close to me. It's been exactly 10 years since Coindesk barely fended off the epic text size wars, when Coindesk readers experienced varying text sizes after being directed to at least one of two separate histories, Coindesk Turbo and Coindesk Smooth. That harrowing moment brought crypto news to the brink, but thanks to the courageous efforts of Pete Rizzo, MPM Sweeney, and Daniel Carey, as well as others, the site survived and crypto news was saved for the time being." Fun story about the text size of Coindesk. We also had some fun stories from My Curio Cards. They're launching a new NFT cereal, Curio Crunch, announced on April 1st. You could collect them all with prizes inside. And then there's lots of fun here. I made some Sora commercials. I can't believe they're closing Sora. It's so fun. It doesn't load here, so maybe that's why. But still, here we go. No sound.
Meet Curio Crunch, sweet raccoon-shaped bites and pixel cards that unlock real digital collectibles. Boom, add it to my wallet. Crunch it, collect the crunch. From the
These are so great. There's another one here for the animated raccoon character.
Meet Curio Crunch, crispy raccoon bites and colorful pixel squares made for serious crunching. Every box has a curio card inside. Scan it and boom, your own digital collectible. Big crunch, big flavor, crooning collectors.
I'm gonna miss Sora. How fun is that? We also made a keto version with less carbohydrates, Curio Crunch Magic Spoon Edition. And I think there's maybe one more ad on it. It's pretty radical. Let's see how it goes.
Introducing Curio Crunch, the first breakfast cereal linked to the iconic Curio Cards collection. Crunchy raccoon puffs, hollow tokens, and a collectible drop in every box. Totally gnarly. Eat it, skate it, own it, each box on the radical.
It would take me weeks to make that. How fun is that? We've also got a story here about Axie Infinity. A 22-year-old bought 2 houses with video game money and accidentally broke the Philippine economy. The game was Axie Infinity. Players battled cartoon monsters to earn a token called SLP. At its peak, SLP was worth 34 cents. Regular players were earning $150 to $195 a month, more than a full-time salary in the Philippines. People were making more. Then all of a sudden, this kid, 22-year-old, posted a selfie outside his 2 new houses on Facebook, and the government saw it. They immediately declared in-game earnings taxable income. Players were ordered to register as taxpayers. The SLP crashed 99% in 6 months. People had killed the economy, and that was the end of Axie Infinity, a sad end to the many players in the Philippines. Marty Malney, friend of the show, writes, "Got annoyed by Tailscale requiring third-party accounts, so I created Noster VPN. It signals over Noster relays and creates a WireGuard boring ton network built for Mac OS and Linux. Using it between his Macs, but hasn't tested extensively yet. Just another really neat use for Noster to replace Tailscale. If you haven't heard of Tailscale, check it out. It's like a private VPN. You can connect your computers together and access them while you're away. It's very useful, and I imagine that Noster VPN is the same thing." Shout out to Marty Malney. And in AI news, let's go back to the panel for a second. What do you guys think about the stories so far? We had some great Curio Cards NFT April Fools, the Noster VPN, and what about Axie Infinity? Arthur Van Pelt, what do you think about the collapse of Axie as well as the other fun stories?
Well, actually, the thing that I liked from Coindesk about the text size war, it was hilarious because it has a lot of the same angles come back in. I think this one about the data spam wars. I recognize angles within, and the block size wars, and this is then the text size war. So yeah, I had to laugh. I found it a really great story. The other story that I liked because it's so telling for what we call these days the shit coins, is that SLP story. That people make money, people make a lot of money, and then it's crashing 99%. And this was, of course, well, a bit of unexpected way how it can crash, and I'd never heard about this. This was the first time that I came across this story. But even under these circumstances, the token, the shitcoin, is crashing 99%, and that's what they all do, one way or the other. And here also showing off with your riches, and the government is trying to take a piece of the pie, and then everybody's running away because nobody wants to give that piece of the pie, and then it's crashing anyway, and everybody's losing their pie anyway. Crazy story.
I remember when it was going on, it sounded so fun. The people in the Philippines were playing a game. It's kind of like Pokemon. They fight the monsters against each other, and somehow, like Arthur says, I don't know how it works, somebody was making money. And it's just so funny because you got to figure everybody you tell to, you're like, quit your job. We're going to play Pokemon for money. They say, you're an idiot. This won't last, whatever. And they were right. Like, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it was, people were able to play this game and make money. And then it went away.
Basically, it's a sort of Ponzi going on with that SLP token, because when the price is going up, then of course everybody is making money when they airdrop those tokens from games into the pockets of the players. I mean, of course, then you can make money. And then people who think that the price will go up forever, they will buy the token on the side. And then the people earning those tokens will sell them, etc., etc. So it can go on but it's a sort of Ponzi. Of course, it will collapse, and especially when the government jumps in, bye-bye.
It's amazing to see it go countrywide, though. An entire country caught up in essentially a Ponzi or a video game or whatever it is, and everyone knows it's going to go bad, and then eventually it does. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the fun stories so far?
Yeah, I mean, I was quite struck by the Philippine one. I mean, I remember back in the day, Andreas Antonopoulos giving a very famous talk where he talked about the fact that if you play SimCity, the one way in which you can guarantee that you're going to devastate your economy and the local population is with taxes. The scary monster doesn't do it. War doesn't do it. You know, ultimately, it's raising the taxes. If you want to devastate the population, raise the taxes. And this, you know, it's a small ecosystem that demonstrated exactly that. And I think it's hilarious that the Philippine government went to all that trouble to put together the tax legislation, and just as they're about to implement it, there's suddenly nothing to tax anymore, because in their actions they've kind of killed the golden goose. So yeah, I mean, it's a story for the digital age. I mean, obviously, if you're paying attention, you often come across stories like this, and you know, these are, you know, the little tests, the little experiments that are giving you flavors of how the economy could work in the not too distant future. So yeah, I find those stories very interesting.
Well, and I would love to see a data analysis of Axie Infinity. How many players there were? What was the average size of the wallet? How large did they get? How much did they put in? If we can tell that, things like that. Because unlike Magic cards or baseball cards or any of these offline cards, these were all on a blockchain or a database somewhere. So all the information must be there. And as I've seen with the AI, you can really go through and analyze some data these days. It's pretty exciting. So I'm sure I'll see an interesting thing on that, or I'll tell one of my AIs to do it. We've got a couple more fun stories as we go through here towards the end of the show. Do you understand what this man just pulled off? A guy from North Carolina used AI to generate hundreds of thousands of songs, uploaded them to Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, then botted billions of streams on his own tracks and walked away with $8 million. 660,000 fake streams per day spread across thousands of AI songs, so nobody noticed. It's kind of an interesting, real artists are grinding us out. This guy had AI make the music and the audience. I hadn't quite seen that he did the audience as well, though. So at first I thought, well, it's okay because he got people to listen to his music. But now I see it's really bad on both sides. What do you guys think, just really quick, about this guy who created, hundreds of thousands of his own music songs, then listened to them It's the only time I've heard of anybody actually making money as an artist on Spotify or on these new systems. Let's go to Arthur just really quick, and then we'll go to Victoria before the next story. What do you think, Arthur?
Yeah, this is like the previous story, also some crazy story from from the digital age, as you said. And yeah, that last sentence is so telling. Now they have to fight songs that don't exist being listened to by people who don't exist. I think the guy, and this may sound silly, but I think the guy is a hero for pulling this off. I mean, it's a brilliant idea and brilliantly executed, and he ran away with millions. Okay, he got caught, and in a sense, that's good because it's stealing the money from honest people. So yeah, that won't last long. But how he pulled it off and the idea behind it, I think it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Creating a fake economy and making money from the real economy because it's part of a platform where you create a little corner on the side that is doing as if it is real, but it's completely fake, and it's pulling in the money from the real world. Yeah, brilliant, really.
I agree. I think it was a really interesting story. It's not really Bitcoin related, but it's just such a clever idea, being both sides of the thing. And I think, as you're saying, it exposes how Spotify is ripping these artists off. These artists could be better off getting bots to listen to their song, no matter the level of artist. And that shows, again, what a bad deal they got with Spotify, where the major labels moved all their money from, having major labels to having Spotify, and then got everyone to sign on. And now they have no choice. And they make it seems like 3 cents a song or 3 cents a play, something like that. Victoria Jones, what do you think about the very clever man who created his own music and then created his own audience?
Yeah, I mean, the best analogy I can give is like a white hat hacker, where they try and find flaws in the system. And so they've kind of highlighted, just how ridiculous this is. I mean, I agree, it's a brilliant move, good play if you can get it, but how unfair to the real people. I mean, it's a travesty. If you look back in time, it's almost like the 80s and early 90s were like the peak of music, because that's when you had the superstars where it was possible to do well. And if you've got that kind of reward, look at the quality that comes out of it. But now it's just kind of devaluing the whole system. And I mean, I have a teenage daughter, and she's not interested in modern music. She just wants to listen to the 80s because that's when the quality songs were. So yeah, it's a shame.
It's interesting. We all thought computers would destroy music. I think we thought it would be synthesizers and electronic music. But no, it was literally computers destroying music, making fake music, and then listening to it themselves, like replicating and displacing the old economy. And he did it so much that they noticed, as it says in the chat. Did he really get away with it? He got caught. But again, I think maybe it's just an art project. It was just all a laugh, something like that. But of course, he took down millions, so they'll get him for that. We have a couple more fun stories. Here's another great Beeple. This is called Zuck Deleting the Metaverse. And you can see Zuck's wearing one of the shirts from his Metaverse project and pouring gasoline on all of the headsets and all of the money. Just a horrifying end to Zuck's Metaverse project. Money deleted, company renamed. We've got Terry Mark at MarkCute22 writing in, longtime users are frustrated with X because it no longer works the way it used to. Back in the early days of Twitter, your reach was simple and direct. If you had 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 followers, your tweets were delivered to them in real time. It was a true chronological feed. Your tweets showed up in the order you posted them, and your audience actually saw your content. The old Twitter was built around that real-time experience. Your voice reached the people who chose to follow you without interference. Today, that's no longer the case. X relies on algorithm-driven, engagement-based feed like Facebook, meaning that even your own followers may never see your tweets unless the system decides to prioritize them. That shift from a guaranteed audience to an unpredictable algorithm is why so many longtime users feel frustrated and disconnected. And I totally agree. Twitter was a beautiful and wonderful place I built up a following there. I could talk to people, we could interact and have a good time. And it feels like that is gone now. So if they wanted to change something, go back to the chronological feed, get rid of that algorithm feed. But we all know they're not going to do that. But it is a very great comment here about how Twitter used to work. And we have one more Beeple in reference to last week's show where I read that incredibly long Vanity Fair article about the crypto influences. It says F Vanity Fair by Beeple, and it shows Dorian Satoshi Nakamoto, the famous stand-in for Satoshi, lighting a cigarette on fire with a burning copy of Crypto True Believers Demand to be Taken Seriously, with the photo and headline in Vanity Fair, his fingers on top of Meltem's face, wearing a old leather jacket. Just a great photo, a great image again from Beeple. Just fantastic stuff. But we're running out of time. I did want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin censorship and knots. I know that Arthur and Victoria both disagree with me, but let's just do a little bit. Arthur, for about 30 seconds to a minute there. What is your opinion on Bitcoin knots and the idea that people are attempting to put images into the Bitcoin blockchain?
Oh yeah, I do have an elevator pitch about that. Bitcoin for me is money and only money. It's not a database for storing images. It has never been, and it shouldn't be right now. What I see is that the measurements that they put in place is only the fees and the block size limit. That's not enough. It's not working well enough. It's working for a bit, of course, but I think more is needed. So we need mempool filtering. We need consensus rules adjustments, more tightening, I guess, and we need to fix some bugs. Sorry. And yeah, and that is the fight going on, because there are some who think that only the fees and the block size limit are working well and well enough. But I think that the risk for the future is still on immutable data being stored in a blockchain that is only for financial transactions. So if say some spam, if copyrighted spam, if that type of stuff, where people will start chasing the nodes for deleting stuff or owning and spreading illegal stuff, classified material from governments that are secret stuff. I mean, it's going to end badly somewhere. Satoshi's already said it about storing of text messages. It's an accident waiting to happen. And he's actually right. Those things are an accident waiting to happen. And people who are not taking that serious, which is the Bitcoin core side and their fans, yeah, sorry, you're going to be wrong in the long run. That's what I'm afraid of.
See, I see it a little differently. I see that, in my opinion, there's already images on the blockchain now. You can already put data, like you said, text. You can put links to bad things. You can put religious things that people disagree with, so on and so forth, all kinds of blasphemous and evil content. And I already see us as pirates. I already see that the Bitcoiners, we're wearing financial suits now. We're pretending that we work well with Wall Street. I already see Bitcoin as this uncensorable money that pays for anything. And when I say anything, it means things I agree with, things I disagree with. Bitcoin pays for war. Bitcoin pays for drugs. It pays for people getting hurt. But it pays for people to go to college. It pays for people to get new cars. It pays for, everything. It's money, right? It doesn't care. And when I look at this technically, as like a technical person, I see that spam filters don't work. They don't block spam. They don't protect freedom. They really just don't work. So I don't know that we want to get into the spam filter business in the same way that I don't want to filter Bitcoin transactions. Where's this money going? What's it doing? I don't know. And I find when I think about what could be more supporting to a cause than money, right? I'm going to send you money and you can build a dungeon to do horrible things, right? You can build a school to teach wonderful things. It's money. I don't know what it's going to be used for. So I'm on the other side of that, but I enjoy getting your perspective, Arthur. And now I want to go to Victoria, who's probably going to disagree with me too. But Victoria, what do you think? Arthur has his opinion. I've shared mine. And how's yours? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I see it completely the same way as Arthur. I think it is definitely a problem. And I would go further than that and say I don't think Knots has found an an acceptable solution either. It's an attempt at a solution, but it's not good enough. And in terms of using money, I mean, yes, okay, you can use the US dollar for all sorts of things, but if you start putting pornographic images on the dollar bill, you're going to have a problem, because that's what people see and that's what they associate it with. There's a reason why they used to put heads of state and, people who'd contributed significantly to society on dollar bills, because that's what gives it its authority. And you've got a risk of completely devaluing the authority of Bitcoin by allowing a whole load of junk on it that was never meant to be there in the first place. So yeah, I absolutely think it's a problem. I said it last October. I haven't changed my mind on that. No one has convinced me differently ever since. And I don't think Knots has come up with a good enough solution, and someone needs to. But the thing is, with the SegWit debate, I think they were debating it for a long time before they came up with an acceptable solution, and eventually they did. So I think, there's a possibility that Bitcoin will be saved in the long run, but I do not see a good solution that has been put forward yet. And I'm not a software developer, so I'm just waiting. I'm commenting and waiting for the moment someone comes up with it.
And again, from my perspective, Bitcoin's a data network. Money's a form of data. And that Bitcoin's really for cypherpunks and libertarians who don't care. They don't care what kind of data they're transmitting. They don't care what the money is supporting or what it's doing. They're more about that, freedom of transaction, that cypherpunk freedom. Anyone can do anything. And it seems like everyone else in the room is a poser, and that they're not really punk, and that they're putting on their business suits and they're like, we need to protect this network. And again, it's this network full of pirates. Like, it's all cypherpunks and libertarians. And it seems to me if we stick to our rules and we stay agnostic, that we'll all get through this and we'll be fine. But I want to go to Arthur for one more closing word. Arthur, what do you think? You've heard myself and Victoria just a little bit more, and then we'll go on to the close of the show. Thank you.
Yeah, no, then I have to repeat what I just said. I do not agree with an all too libertarian and all too much cypherpunk approach to just a simple thing. It's money. Money, it needs to be transferred as it's used for I don't know the right word for it, but you exchange money as a means for making barter more easy somehow. But I don't know. There's an English saying for it, but I don't remember it by now. And that's what should be the only purpose of Bitcoin. It's a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. I mean, the title of the Bitcoin white paper already says it. It's not about data. It's not about exchanging and being, we do not censor anything. Filtering contamination is not censorship. That's bullshit. Sorry, that is such a bullshit. And it's the same for being permissionless. I mean, filtering contamination is not being permissioned suddenly. I mean, all native transactions will still happen. You pay for goods, you pay for services, it will still happen. And indeed, we will not censor Bitcoin transactions that are native and are between two people who are paying for goods and services. That is really not the meaning, not from Knots, not from anyone who is a fan of BIP 110. So, yeah, I have no idea what those core people in the fence, and yeah, I'm very sorry to see that even Adam Back has fallen for that crazy narrative. He used to be against spam quite a lot, but now he is a big spam fan for some reason. I have no idea why, but he is. And they put being censorship resistant and permissionless, they put it on top, but I think it has nothing to do with it.
It does seem when we talk about filters, if we talk about in a data perspective, we can agree when a transaction is misformed. We can agree when an address is incorrect if the number or letter is in a wrong space. But I find it's very difficult for us to agree on what is good or bad data. If there was a way we could say if the data starts with an A1, it's all bad data, we can filter it out. But without that, shared understanding of this is bad data, I don't know how we can get to that point. And I think then we're going to be fighting about what's on this filter list, which, as we've seen for the internet, they tried this on the internet. They tried to filter everything for the children, so on and so forth. So I just think that if you look at the history of spam filters and censorship, or whatever you want to call it, I don't think they've ever worked properly. So, but I think we're going to have to keep this debate going, keep this discussion going. So I thank you, Arthur, for your perspective, and Victoria. And we're going to move on to predictions or story of the week. Victoria Jones, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week, or what you've been up to lately?
Well, I just wanted to comment on the end of that discussion, because obviously, you know, what opened up the whole core v knots debate was the fact that they widened the size of the image, you know, and that's a filter, you know, just restricting it to a certain size of image. And of course, what caused the whole problem was when they exploded that. So yeah. So it's a nuanced argument, but prediction or story of the week, nothing terribly exciting going on. I did notice on last week's show, Thomas, you mentioned that you kindly mentioned my website that Darren and I have been working on. We've decided not to pursue that because, again, with all the knots versus core stuff going on, it's really disrupted how nodes are working. So that really disrupted our work. So, you know, Darren's gone off and pursued another project, and I'm probably going to be pursuing something different as well. But I haven't got round to doing a newsletter I've been meaning to do for months. When I finally get round to it, I'll explain that all in a newsletter. So if you're interested in that, sign up on my website, satoshispage.com.
All right. Thanks so much, Victoria. And Arthur, do you have a prediction or a story of the week, or just tell us what you've been working on lately?
Yeah, of course, I'm going to do a shameless shill for volume 2 in the series of Fake Toshi. You might remember, of course you do remember, because I was in the show for it. We have book number 1. Is it in? I'm not sure if you can see it properly. This is the Fake Toshi fraud lies in the battle for Bitcoin Soul. It's the Craig Wright story. I've been doing that for many years, and for me it was great fun to see that in 2024, Justice Meller in the UK, yeah, he basically grabbed all my Medium articles, which are close to 50 long-form articles, and he made a summary of it in the ruling that said Craig Wright is not Satoshi Nakamoto, and I recognized page by page after page after page. I recognized my work that I have been building for many years. My good friend Mark Hunter from the UK is writing the book. I'm proofreading them and correcting them here and there, filling up some gaps here and there, but it's basically Mark Hunter, his work. But he's kind enough to put my name on it also, because he is using my Medium articles. He's using the Dr. Bitcoin podcast material that we built up together for several years, where we reported about the Craig Wright story. And volume 2 is out. You can pre-order it on drbitcoin.com, and it's going to be delivered shortly. That's my story of the week.
All right, very cool. Check out Arthur's new book and his earlier book, Fake Toshi, and Fake Toshi Volume 2. Very good stuff from Arthur Van Pelt and at drbitcoin.com. My story of the week, I just watched a great documentary, Mr. Nobody Against Putin. It recently won the Academy Award for Best Documentary, and it is well worth seeing. The gentleman there, Pasha, is like a multimedia instructor at an elementary school. And all of a sudden, his life changes. He used to make music videos for the school and just document what the kids were up to. Now his job is filming the teachers as they do the important patriotic lessons. And we see as the Russian school system is changed to a wartime Russian school system. It's a very interesting documentary called Mr. Nobody Against Putin. Check it out. And that's about it for this week's show. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.